Oh, let's call a meeting to order. About the roll call, everybody's present. Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Got us right of the room. First order of business is approve the minutes of the March 7th regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any questions, comments, deletions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Classes are approval of the fire department bills. Chief,
Good morning.
good morning.
In front of you, you have two sets of bills. Both were signed by Commissioner Keough. First one was on March 3rd and the other on March 15th. Just two things that I'll bring up, and if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer others. On 4B, you'll notice a payment for $1,995 to Aristatech. That is for hazmat software renewal. It's an annual charge. It's an annual budgeted amount. And then on 4C, payment towards a new engine of $601,000. That is the prepayment, so we can get prepayment discounts. And other than that, nothing else is really out of the ordinary. Everything is budgeted, and I'd be happy to answer any questions and ask for your approval.
Are there any questions? Entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any questions? Roll call.
Neese? Yes. Miller?
Yes.
Keough?
Yes.
Gershman?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes. Thank you. Next item is the police department bills. Chief,
Yes, good morning.
good morning.
I think you have three sets of bills in front of you, signed by Commissioner Meese, Gershman, and Myers. Bring your attention on 5C. Every couple months you'll see bills come through from Colorado State University. That's Assistant Chief Zepps and myself finishing up our master's degree. We should be done with that, both be done with that within the next year. So we'll be happy when those bills stop coming, but when the classes stop coming as well. On 5E, you'll see some purchases of routers for our squads. These were new routers that we purchased through AT&T, but they're FirstNet routers, which give law enforcement and fire priority permission in the event of a crisis. So those were upgraded just about a month ago. And then in 5T, you'll see an investigative vehicle purchase. It wasn't the initial payment, that's a total payment of only $33,000, so not quite that $600,000.
You bought a Jeep?
Jeep Cherokee, yeah. So, but that'll be the total amount of $33,000. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on those bills. Otherwise, look for your approval.
They're just trying to be like us and one of every type.
Don't make fun, Mr. Rosenbaum.
Wasn't my order.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the bills.
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments?
Yep. I gotta find it, Basically, maybe there's one more set of bills. Yeah, there is. On page, I don't know, 50, is that possible? And you've got $1,435 on-site therapy services. That's sort of like having a bill for Menards for $100, and it's, parts. I don't know what it means. Therapy services, is that for one person or six?
What that is when we have our athletic trainer come on site 2 days per week. Over the course of the month, that's the monthly fee that we pay to have that on-site physical therapy and sports medicine that we contract with through Advanced Physical Therapy.
You know, it might be helpful in bills like that to have some sense of I don't know what happens in those 2 days. Do they sit and wait for people to walk in? Have they got people lined up? What are we getting for that 1,400?
Yeah, what it is 2 days, it's 2 hours per day, and officers or employees can call and set up appointments, otherwise they can just stop in. She's been very busy. When she's not there, her partner, physical therapist, Dennis, is there, and they stay busy the whole 2 hours, so they're seeing employees.
How
throughout the
often
whole-
does she come?
2 days per week, for
Okay.
2 hours per day, so for a total
4
of,
hours a week, 12 hours a
so
month.
16 to
16.
18 hours.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions? Roll call vote.
Mies,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Keel,
Yes.
Kirschman,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes. Fire department activities, training reports, and correspondence packet. Chief.
Just a couple of things to highlight. Again, busy month for us. We continue to see several EMS students riding along, paramedic and EMT. That'll run through May or so, into May, as they get their required time in. Several car seat checks and installs were completed throughout the month. We have 5 or 6 certified techs here, and they stay pretty busy doing those. On 6C and D, we met with Tracy from Advanced Physical Therapy on our functional job analysis as part of our initiative. We went through the initial job descriptions. We weighed most pieces of equipment that we have as part of this, and then we reviewed it, and we do the validation test on April 19th to see how everything plays out. And after that, we tweak it, then everybody will go through validation on it. On 6E, the on-duty shift, along with myself, Deputy Chief Lucarelli, and Deputy Chief Bakos, attended a presentation by Lee Eagle, who is the Sun Prairie Director of Public Works, related to the explosion that occurred in Sun Prairie in July of 18. Very good presentation. Deputy Chief Lucarelli set this up as part of the Emergency Management Planning Committee, and had about 80 people signed up for it. So it was a very good presentation, and I know Street Division, the entire workforce was there, and they got a lot out of it. You'll note several thank you letters and cards in there, and other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions as to place on file.
Are there any questions? Andy?
Scott, I seem to remember, and I admit my memory is not as good as it ought to be, but do I remember that you intended to bring us something this meeting having to do with the physical?
No, last month I wasn't here. There was that update on that I typed out, and then by June we'll have another big update as to where we're sitting once we get through the April and May.
When are you going to have that process completed and an assessment that the firefighters and whoever will go through? When is that?
It's a
going to be?
2-year implementation period.
What?
Just like the PD. The PD was a 3-year, 2 to 3 year.
Started in, probably late 16, early 17.
Yeah.
Can we see that timeline?
You certainly can. It's working with advanced physical therapy,
That's fine.
and
but,
it's,
we've been at this a long time, just like with the PD. And with the PD, we asked to know when it was going to be done, when it's going to be implemented. And I don't think it's unfair to ask the fire department to give us the same information.
no, and you will get that. It's just going to take, the full implementation is a 2-year period. And so the next steps are to do the validation, and then after that, everybody in the department goes through the validation again, and it's tweaked. The policy is drafted, and then it It comes here, you guys, approve the policy, and then it'll be implemented. So the full implementation, according to what we've been working with Tracy on, is a 2-year by the time everybody is up to speed. It's a,
Would you take a little time to write down the steps with some dates on it so that we've got it in writing, what's gonna happen, when?
sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments on the fire department activities? And we'll receive those and place them on file. Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
School of Work partnership with area high schools. Got a presentation by Lieutenant Jonas.
Relief Lieutenant. I'm the substitute.
Relief Lieutenant.
Thank you and good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. I've been asked to come here and update you and possibly ask for your permission in moving forward. When I took over the public education committee about 4 years ago, we had some goals, short-term, long-term goals, and this was one of our long-term goals, vision being to actively engage the people of our community in hopes of spurring public interest and participation. What that has morphed into is an identified need to get involved in our hiring process. Regionally speaking, and I think you could even say nationally speaking, the fire service, police service is having issues with getting people to apply to our protective services. What we see on this committee is an opportunity to get into the high school here, which happens to be one of the best high schools in the state, along with Columbus High School, looking to build a program or implement a program. I think build is probably the wrong term because the groundwork already exists with their pathway programs. I do have a meeting next week to discuss what this program would look like. I'm looking to get into the high school in Columbus and set up a program in which the kids can come here through an application process, go through our recruit employee system, possibly do projects for the fire department, and possibly gain college credit from MSTC or NTC for their work. Obviously, all of this is a work in progress, and that's what next week's meeting is for, to establish goals and a vision for what this program is going to look like from our perspective and from the high school's perspective. Once we get this established locally, this is something that I see that we can implement and take out to the outlying communities. One such model is already in place with A&B processing in Stratford. They actively are in the schools working with the welding departments, and they have hired students right out of high school. So they get to pick these kids, work with them, put them to work. So they're hiring local kids that stay local, and that's been a problem for us here at the fire service. So this is something that I'm looking to work towards and hopefully implement here in the city of Marshfield.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Are there any questions? I look forward to hearing more about that. It's a very positive move as part of the department to get involved like that and spur some interest in the community. It's a good move. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Excuse me. Enjoy your day.
Have a good day. Next item is consideration of termination of the underground storage tank contract. Deputy Chief Sleddy.
Sure. There's a informational sheet, I guess, a memorandum in your packet that kind of goes into detail regarding the USTAC program. It was started back in the 90s. A lot of departments jumped on board. It's in partnership with the state where you go and get trained, send a few inspectors through the training, and then those inspectors would go out and conduct inspections of above ground and below ground storage tanks, petroleum storage tanks. Part of the program also involves plan review for tanks under 5,000 gallons. Back in the 90s, it was fruitful. They paid well. Over the years, there's been steady, slow cuts to the program. And we've seen a lot of career fire departments drop off. A lot of them aren't doing this anymore. In fact, we're the only one in central Wisconsin that's continued to do this. We have about 34, 35 inspections that we do. We probably do 5 to 7, maybe 10 in a good year installs or removals, and then as well as some plan reviews. But roughly last year we took in $3,500-ish. Just doesn't seem to be worth the time. Deputy Chief Clemens, Lieutenant Esker, and myself have been discussing this for about 6 months just to see if we want to continue doing this. It just doesn't seem like it's a good program to continue with. I think we could be spending our time in other areas, especially for that kind of money per year. So we're looking for approval to give the state 30 days notice to terminate our contract. There is no cancellation fee or any repercussions or anything. You just simply need to give 30 days notice. At our last continuing education training, we talked to one of the inspectors from Chippewa Fire District, and she was very interested in taking over our tanks and doing our installs and things like that. Chippewa Fire District, I believe, has 2 dedicated people just for petroleum UST, AST tanks. And I think that's the only way you can make this pay off, is if you have a couple of people dedicated and you take as much area as you possibly can. She already comes all the way over to Portage, so it was on her way to come over and take over our tanks. So she was actually very excited to take those over, and we're happy to, I think, as a department, move away from the program. So we're looking for approval to discontinue that program. Like I said, our tanks, our installs, everything will still be inspected and checked and done. It'll just be by a different agency, either state or a different department. So we're looking for approval to terminate our contract with the state.
I'll make that motion.
No, second.
Motion and a second to approve. I think one other point, unless I missed it, was that the people that are doing it now are in a different position, and we have to send people to be trained for it.
Correct. It's right now all the inspectors kind of moved up and were promoted. It's myself, Deputy Chief Clemens, and Lieutenant Esker. Typically, it's done by a line firefighter, and to send a person to school, it costs probably $3,000. We figure for the week-long class. It just didn't make any sense anymore. So, because that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Just a quick question.
Go ahead.
And they set the rates, we can't do anything about charging them more either, right?
No, that's set from the state. Yeah.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve. That's a roll call vote.
Meese? Miller?
Yes.
Keel?
Yes.
Gershman?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes. That's to discontinue the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the information.
Yeah.
Police Department activities, training reports, and correspondence. Chief.
We had a fairly busy month. You'll see, I'll bring a couple things to your attention. On March 1st, we had interviews for a new hire. I want to thank Commissioner Meese for helping us out at the interview. It was worthwhile. We were able to offer employment to one individual. They'll be starting full-time, I believe, May 6th. So for the next meeting we have in May, we'll bring that person here for introductions. March 7th, we had active shooter presentation at the YMCA for their child care employees, teaching them how to respond to an active shooter, an active threat situation in their environment. On the 11th, we also did a debrief at the Marshfield Medical Center with the fire department and their staff in reference to that incident that we were called to, where somebody was reported to be entering the building with a gun. On the 12th, I had a meeting with Dr. Myra West. Myra is a behavioral psychologist at the clinic. She's been there about 2 years, has worked in the Child Advocacy Center, but 10 years prior to that, she had a private practice down in Chicago and actually worked with Chicago police officers with, through debriefs and through just some critical incident situations and personal situations, and she wants to, she's reaching out to our department, ultimately, I believe it'll be fire and police, to offer services or some sort of partnership if there's psychological services needed after an incident or debrief or stress or struggles that an officer or a firefighter is going through, based on just some of the, what we sometimes look at as just normal job functions or normal job responses that we have, but that can cause long-term or lasting effects, whether it's a vehicle crash or a death of a child or something that we end up responding to. So she has over 10 years of experience working with Chicago police departments, and for her to reach out and say she wants to partner with local law enforcement and emergency service personnel is kind of exciting because we haven't had something like that in the area. On the 16th, we had a rabies and animal licensing clinic at the mall, and that was well attended. And then lastly, on the 21st, I'll bring up, we had a luncheon at ODC, the Opportunity Development Center in town here. We partner with them and employ an individual who performs some clerical duties, but then also does our parking enforcement, handles our parking enforcement during the summer. And they were just having an appreciation luncheon, and we had a couple of staff attend that. So it's always nice that keep that partnership going. Be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I ask for those to be placed on file.
Any questions on the police department activities? Seeing none, we'll place those on file. Appreciate it. Thank you. Next time is approval of the budget resolution for Regional Computer Forensics Laboratory membership. Chief?
Yes, so last meeting I had asked for your approval on a partnership for the Regional Computer Forensics Lab, which you approved. Since we hadn't budgeted that $2,000 amount, we were looking to pull that money out of a drug seizure restitution fund that we have. I believe we have just over $9,000 in that fund. We usually take money out of that fund and put that towards criminal investigations or equipment or things we need. We thought that this computer forensic lab membership would be good for that. We also have an individual who we would like to send to level 3 cell phone master technician training. This is a training that is rarely held in the area. It's costly. It's to the tune of roughly, with lodging and meals, about $2,400. There's only within probably about a 100-mile radius of the city, there's only one other person in that area that's trained in this. So the detective that we'd be sending to this would obviously then be one of two, but would also be able to perform some technical forensic investigations to an extent, and extraction from cellular devices to an extent that we normally need to solicit help from that one person that's probably at this point overburdened. But it also allows our detective to testify in an expert capacity should the need arise in a court case. With that $2,483, I'd also like to pull that out of that drug seizure fund. The money into that drug seizure fund comes from if we make drug purchases, illicit drug purchases throughout the community. We request, when the person is charged out through criminal court, we request restitution so that we can, so the money we use to buy the drugs, that we get that replenished. The courts are good about requesting that restitution when we get those checks, and sometimes you'll see checks, they trickle in sometimes they come in larger. I think in this packet there's a check for $2.28, but it's checks like that from the court system that go into this restitution fund, and it's ultimately defendants paying us back for the money we spent on buying drugs from them. So it kind of just comes full circle. But, so that's, over the years, that has, like I said, we're sitting at just over $9,000 in that account, and we wanted to, so I'm asking your approval to take $2,000 and $2,483, so a total of $4,483 out of that restitution fund to put towards both this training and the computer forensic lab fee.
Is there a motion to approve the budget resolution?
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any questions?
Is that just restitution money? Just curious, or is there seizure money that goes in that same fund?
Seizure money usually goes in a different fund. Well, we have a state seizure fund and a federal seizure fund. Those both have roughly $10,000 in each one as well, and those are funds that we sometimes tap into to purchase equipment or make certain purchases as well. The nice thing about pulling money out of those funds is when we send somebody, when we use that money, it's not an impact on the taxpayers or the tax base at all, because it's money that's either been seized or paid through that restitution.
How's the funds actually get in there, or why are they not going down? If it's just money to buy drugs and then get reimbursed, where did it come from?
So every year we budget roughly $18,000 in our budget, and that budgeted money is for things like drug purchases. It's also pays for some tipster money if Crime Stoppers isn't going to cover the cost of that tip, if somebody gives a tip to something. But yeah, we have about $18,000 annually that we budget for making drug purchases or using that money towards a large-scale criminal investigation. So it kind of depends. I mean, it's not really earmarked for anything but criminal investigations, but we often use it for the drug purchases. Sometimes we get that money back through, sometimes we'll get money. We have a couple grants that we partner with Central Wisconsin Drug Task Force. It's a 8-county, 14-agency task force, and they apply for, they have both a state and federal grant. So a lot of the drug purchases that are being made out of that $18,000 are reimbursed back to us through the grant.
Okay.
And then when the defendant pays back the money, we place it in the restitution fund.
And his question triggered something in. The defendant pays back. Where does that money come? Where does the defendant get the money? Yeah, I was thinking drug sales. Damn, they got me. I got to sell more now. But in effect, it's either out of their wages or it's selling assets or whatever.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I got a quick one for
Yep.
Chief Owens. I appreciate
Oh, wait,
this.
we got to vote on this.
Oh,
Thank you. On the resolution. Okay. I'll have to roll call vote on approving the resolution.
Mies? Yes. Miller?
Yes.
Keel?
yes.
Gershman?
Yes.
Myers?
Yep. Thank you. Andy?
Just a quick one, Scott. I appreciate these, in the summary from 2018. Just a quick question. If we sum 2018, we come up with $19,049.05. Now that's, from my perspective, that's a good number. The problem is I don't know if it's a good number. Should it be more than that, or?
No, that's, so that was the amount that was charged out.
Yeah.
And the rates that we currently use are very comparable to everybody around us.
Yeah, no, that's not quite where I'm going. $800 and some thousand.
Good.
Yeah. Is that what you expect? Or did you expect $1 million something? Or did you expect 700,000?
No, I would say that's probably about the right amount.
Okay.
It's definitely more than it has been in years past.
All right. You know, I don't have a context to put the number in, so I don't know if it's a good
Sure.
number or not a good number.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
The net would be lower though, I presume, just less than half.
Well, because of the collections, yeah.
Yeah, so there's, I think in that, on the bottom of the page just before, it'll say like our amount, it was like 300,000 or something, maybe a little bit more.
So I know that city adjustments to their budgeting was like 50% is what they're hoping for.
Right.
So we're actually below their estimates.
Yeah, and it's so hard to determine what Medicare is going to, there's changes on the horizon for Medicare, things that we'll be able to bill for that we haven't in the past. But Medicare, Medicaid are just terrible with reimbursements.
Yeah.
And I'd say that's probably, Medicare is probably
That's the number I could-
40% of our payer mix, if not 50.
Okay, well, we got another item on the agenda. Before we go there, that's something I'd like to share with you. It's from 92 years ago, in 1927.
You were there then, right?
Well, no, you were talking about this the other day. I wrote it all down. Weary Willie, it was a title given to local police, to individuals who seek hospitality in the city jail. It was popular visitor. Wee Willie was a popular visitor in Marshfield the past month, according to the report by William Pappy, the police chief. Pappy's report reveals that 71 Weary Willies were afforded free lodging in the Marshfield jail during the month of November. The list of guests that the police department exceeded the previous month by 18. Other interesting facts are revealed in the police chief's report. Fines paid into the city treasury totaled $403, while fines collected for the state amounted to $25. Fees collected for the city totaled $32. The police department answered 94 telephone calls during the month of November. 26 arrests were made for offenses varying from grand larceny to drunkenness. Various arrests. The following officers are credited with making arrests: Gravitter, 9 arrests; Pappy, 7 arrests; Meyer, 6 arrests; Fixon, 3 arrests; and Beal, 1 arrest. And that's our famous Fred Beal, worked part-time in the police department. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I wanted to share it with you. The other thing was a couple of years later in 32, part of the report was night officers reported regarding vehicles stopped in order to have their lights fixed. Showed that 46 vehicles were ordered to have their tail lights put in working order. 29 cars had no headlights. 4 trucks did not have proper clearance lights, and 2 trucks had no rear reflectors. So they were busy back then too. So.
No driving and talking on phones?
Pardon?
No driving and talking on phones?
Yeah. Didn't see any of those. It must not have been looking for that month. So. I shared that with the chief the other day, and I just had to share it with you guys too. So. The next item is a consideration of a motion to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, Print 1, Print C, Wisconsin statutes considering employment, promotion, compensation, and performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the government body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Specifically, we're going to conduct steps in the performance reviews of both police and fire. I need a motion to go into closed session.
Move we go into closed session.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in roll call.
Meese? Yes. Miller?
Yes.
Keel?
Yes.
Gershman?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes. We'll be going into the conference room. I don't anticipate, could be wrong, but I don't anticipate any